Hey everybody, Model Man Frank here. How are y'all today? I just here doing some 3D printing on my 3D printer. Trying to print out a little bookmark. I've tried already like a couple of times. My 3D printer decided today, the sensor decided today, I guess, to work. And I am seeing, hopefully it continues to work properly. I probably will. Been talking to some people, and hopefully it works itself out. But I'm here just staring at it, making sure everything works well. How was your weekend? How's everybody's week going? Hope everything is going well with you all. Hope you know, for those of you that live in Florida, hope your cleanup is happening. For those of like us, we've had some beautiful weather. Went flying this past week, Friday. I got some video. I got to download. I just haven't, been. Yesterday, I spent the day cleaning the shed. The day before that, I went and did some errands around and did some cooking. Because on this coming Friday, I gotta get some work done on my teeth and other things that have to be done. So, but just wanted to see. Oh, yeah, that's not working. Hold on one moment, guys. I'm just gonna stop this for now. We'll play around with it later. So, not much in the news has happened in terms of aviation news. I mean, if you're on X, you can see some of the things that are going on. There's some new aircraft. I guess Riyadh Air has been testing. They're going to be flying out of Riyadh, doing direct flights to Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Saw that was going to happen. That's about it, really. I haven't seen any like Warbird news or anything like that. Haven't really been paying attention too much this week. As you can see behind me, I cleaned up the shop a little bit more. Been working on the SST-40 over here. Let me just kind of move the camera, maybe you can see it. Got the wing mounted. Doing a couple other things. The camera is actually mounted on my laptop here, and that's what I'm using to talk to y'all. So, I guess we'll get to it then, right? Hope everything's doing great for y'all, and hope your weekend was great, and I hope if your days are coming off or your days were off, that you were able to do some model building, or you were able to do some history, or whatever aviation related things you like to do. Since you're watching my channel here, maybe you're watching my videos, great. Maybe you've been sharing some of my videos, even better. So I really appreciate it. Also, before I go any further, the Patreon channel the Patreon page is no more. I went ahead and deleted that page. I wasn't on top of it all the time, and I like writing and typing things and making like little reports and stuff like that on airplanes. I'd much rather you read stuff of mine. So I have a Substack. I'll put a link in the description box below here. And that way you can follow, or you can go to my channel main page, and there'll be a link there that you can follow. And there will be also you can sign up for Substack, and then you can sign up for the newsletter, and I'll send you guys an email. It'll automatically generate an email when I post something aviation related or something related, some article that I posted or something like that. So that's a great way to find me, and also we can talk. Also, it's a little easier. It is free to join. It's just fun, something fun, and I'm not really here. I'm not gonna make any money off this. I really like talking to y'all about what I do on my hobby. I like sharing my hobby with y'all. And it's just much more fun that way. So yeah, head over there. If you want to sign up, just go over to Substack. Model Man Frank is the name, or Frank Vega at Model Man Frank, and you'll find me there. So let's get to it. We're talking about Cold War fighters that were used during the Vietnam War. As we spoke last week, we talked about some of the Cold War aircraft that were produced that were kind of like, we all know about the F-104, the F-100s, the F-105s, the Century Series fighters. They were created, a lot of the aircraft that I showed you were the concept aircraft, the ones that didn't make the cut. In other words, they weren't really ordered and put into mass production. Today we're going to go down a little different route and not show you those, but we're going to show you some of the planes that were built during the Cold War. And they were entered into a war. Vietnam was like Afghanistan. Actually, Vietnam was not too much like Afghanistan. It was more like Ukraine, if you want to say it that way. In the sense that we were involved. At first, it was the UN was involved. Actually, I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. At first, it was the French that were fighting the North Vietnamese. And then the Americans got involved. Kennedy got involved and started sending troops. And then he wanted to get out because he knew there was going to be no end to that. And of course, he lost his life before it. We all know what happened. We know the conspiracy theories, but there's a lot more to it than really. I don't think it's a conspiracy anymore. We all know that Kennedy, lost his life. Being the person he was, he had his flaws as a president, and we all know what happened after he lost his life. Being our president, LBJ heightened the war and pushed more into the war. And actually, if you read books about the war, he was pretty much micromanaging the war from his office, which was wrong. He didn't let military planners do their job. Vietnam was one of those wars that so many bad things happened, but it was a war that was really, I don't know if I could say, this is my opinion. This is not the opinion of everybody, and you don't have to like my opinion, but this is what I think. I was born just when the war was ending. Okay, the war ended, and then there was the peacetime a little bit, and then 1974 happened, and that's when I was born. The war was going on for 10 years. Many Americans lost their lives. Many men, women, children. War is a terrible thing. It's not a way to solve problems, but unfortunately, there are bad people in this world that use war to control. And they want to control ideals and idealistics. So getting back to the Vietnam War, there's so many avenues of why the war happened. I could go down so many avenues. But really what I want to concentrate more is on the aviation side. If you ever get a chance to watch the series Vietnam in HD that the History Channel put out, I don't know if they have it for free. You can go to Amazon or maybe try and find a couple of See if you can find, maybe even on YouTube here they have the History Channel about it, or History Vault probably has it, because now the History Channel doesn't show anything historical anymore. It's all, you know, uh, you know, reality television, which is stupid. Can't stand it. But watch the Vietnam HD series. Good movie to watch about what happened after Saigon fell is one would be The Killing Fields. That's a really good movie in terms of how the Khmer Rouge started killing people. Vietnam War aviation films, Flight of the Intruder, Bat 21. What else? Green Berets, I think it was, with John Wayne. I'm not too sure of any other aviation war films. If you know some, put it in the comment field down below so we can talk about it on the next show. Okay? So one of the books that I have that kind of covers the Vietnam Air War, I got this book many years ago. You can find it on maybe some thrift shops, maybe a thrift bookshop online, or if you want to, you can go on eBay. This is the book you really want. It's a Vietnam debrief, Vietnam Air War debrief. Very good book, very well put together. It's by Airtime Publishing. You can see it right there. Airtime Publishing, Vietnam War debrief. This is a really good book, real good pages, lots and lots and lots of material. Good breakdown. I've read the book. It's really well put together. Airtime Publishing has been putting out books for a long time, and they put out magazines, and their writers are very, very good at what they do. So getting to it. First aircraft we're going to talk about, and you got to remember when the Cold War was started up, it was just right after World War II. The mindset that was in place during that period where it was, we were just finishing up with Korea, and we were just starting to creep into the Vietnam War. Now, the mindset in the aviation and the Air Force and the Navy was of Cold War, long-range bombers, we need to build interceptors. That was the Air Force's term. The Navy was still looking at it as we need tactical nukes, we need planes that can find submarines, we need fighter planes, we have some fighter planes. We're going to be doing like carrier battles like World War II. But the Air Force generals were looking at, we want planes that will be able to track down long-range bombers. Because the intercontinental ballistic missile was still not in play completely. It was starting to creep in, but not so much. So you had aircraft like the F-105, F-104, the F-100, F-102, F-106. Those were the Century Series fighters. That's where the F-107 and some of the other aircraft that you see came into play, but never really found the cut. The planes were built, those aircraft, the Century Series fighters, were built for one purpose. They weren't really made for dogfighting. Now, almost every single one of them, the ones that I just mentioned, they failed miserably. A lot of pilots lost their lives. The planes were not built for what Vietnam Air War was about. The only aircraft, and I'm going to talk about it just before in a little bit, that really made the cut in terms of being an airplane that was air superiority. There were actually two aircraft that were air superiority aircraft that really made the cut in terms of being good dogfighters and being good at air superiority, and could have been made into something more and could have been more successful if the generals would have let them do their job and let pilots be what they can be in their aircraft, and let the designers do what was best for the plane. I don't think the aircraft were allowed to be able to do, or the pilots were allowed to do it because of the UN, and that's a whole other story that I can get into, and that's a whole other, ball of wax we can go down, because this whole UN thing with, how these tactics are fought and how people are dying, it's a whole other, you know what, go to my Substack and I'll be uploading some articles on there based on historical avenues. I'm going to be writing some, I'll be putting some of my Cold War theories on there. So the F-100 was a tactical bomber. And, I mean, come on. I'm grabbing the wrong mouse. I got two computers here. I got one computer over here, and I got one mouse for that one, and then I got my mouse here, so I was grabbing the wrong mouse. I'm going to show you... one first. The first aircraft that really... I have no idea what they were thinking, but, they thought, hey, it's a fighter. We need to throw it over there. This aircraft sustained so many. The F-102 Delta Dart. Where can I start with that one, right? I'm sorry, the F-102 is the Delta Dagger, I believe. Am I correct on that? Sorry, guys. You get the F-102 and the F-106 were pretty much close together as fighter planes, or the Delta Dagger. I'm correct. I don't know why I said that. I mean, if you think about it, they're similar in the way they look, right? Ooh, that's cutting right into my face. Let me just close that a little bit. This plane, just by sheer design, the way that this aircraft was set up as a Cold War interceptor. As an interceptor. In other words, bombers were coming over the polar ice cap. This aircraft was built and designed for that purpose. It was not designed to fly in a low-level bombing or close air support aircraft. It was really not designed to get into a dogfight. It was basically to go fast, shoot down planes, and then go home. That's it. That's not what happened here. This plane was just like, they put this aircraft in service. They put the airplane in service during peacetime, and then they brought it over to Vietnam thinking they would get air support. The mindset back then was that our planes were better. Our planes were designed to do, well, we were going to take care of these peasants that are fighting us. Wrong mindset. More did they learn. The F-102 sustained lots of casualties. Many pilots were shot down in the aircraft. MiG-17s were just... They painted it as this really crappy camouflage. You don't hear a lot about this plane being used in Vietnam, but it was used in Vietnam. It didn't last very long in the Vietnam War. It wasn't used very, very much. They withdrew it from service because It just wasn't really built for. It had a bomb bay, but it really wasn't. It didn't have a gun. So getting into a dogfight, you were a dead man. You had to use your speed to get away as quickly as possible in this plane. So F-102 was just not a plane built for a guerrilla-style war that the Vietnam War was. Because Vietnam, let's face it, was a guerrilla-style war. It was a guerrilla war. And it was a war that was meant to be fought in close combat. If the A-10 had been brought onto the scene at an earlier time, it would have been a war that would have been able to be fought with that aircraft. Vietnam was a helicopter war, a troop war, and close air support war. Those are the three things that the Vietnam War was. The MiGs that were being flown, let's face it, they weren't flown by North Vietnamese pilots. They were flown by Russian pilots and Chinese pilots. The North Vietnam did not have the capability to have their own air force. They had an air force, but they didn't have their own pilots. They had some, but very little. Most of them were Russian pilots that were flying these aircraft and Chinese pilots. So this was not a plane here. The F-102 was not a plane that should have been there. It just wouldn't. There was this mindset to have this aircraft. As you can see, it just didn't look like a plane that would really work. The other one was another disaster. The F-104. And when I show you this one, it's going to make you. So yeah, the F-104 did have the F-104 did serve in the Vietnam War. Didn't do too well in dogfights. The F-104 was a missile with a man in it. It had a fuel tank. It wasn't a bomber. It was a fighter plane. Many different countries used it. They had a lot of pilots that it had a high wing load. Kind of. You couldn't carry too much munitions with it. It had a pretty deadly cannon, and it could fly Mach 2.5. Really? But that's all it was really built to do. It was built for speed. When it came into a close proximity to fight a war, Vietnam was a war where the military learned its lesson really quick. You need to have a cannon, and you need to be able to have dogfighting skills. That's why Top Gun was created. The movie, Top Gun's not a movie. Anybody that thinks Top Gun was a movie, it's just a movie? No, it's Top Gun. During Vietnam, you needed to have basic fighter tactics. And going into Vietnam, there were generals and there were politicians that thought we didn't need that. Oh, we can just use a missile. You need to be able to dogfight, to be able to get on your adversary's tail, to be able to shoot them down. And you need to have basic dogfighting skills from World War II and World War I to be able to do that. That's why a lot of ex-World War II pilots who flew in Vietnam did so well, because they knew what to do. They knew how to get on the back of. They were fierce dogfighters. One of the aircraft that really did well and excelled well was the MiG Killer, or, as we all know, the last of the gunslingers. The F-8 Crusader. I'm going to show you one. I've got a model of one right above me. Just bear with me. Not the greatest looking model. This is an RC model from Motion RC. Little story on this one is that it was somebody left it at the club, and yeah, somebody left it at the club because the motor basically disintegrated inside of it. So somebody else printed the nose here. This was a reprint of a nose. I don't know what servo it had. They had some servos in it, but I grabbed it because I thought it was a really cool model just to have to hang from my ceiling. So I gave the club a little donation money for it, and I took it. So this was the last of the real gun slingers. It had 4 machine guns, 2 on each side. Also had carried a sidewinder here and here. And you also had hard points to carry sidewinders also. When the aircraft would come in, this whole wing would actually pop up and be able to allow the aircraft to slow down and give a good angle of attack. As you can see, the aircraft is really built, number one, to go fast and to be able to maneuver. Had a big engine in it. Fuel tank on this plane was literally almost all of this here, kind of like from here all the way back. And then the motor kind of started up here. The motor on this aircraft was huge. So you can see it looks like a really slick killer. This plane had a great shoot down record of MiGs. I'll put a link in the description box. You can watch Discovery Wings. They talk excessively about this aircraft and how good this plane was designed to do. It was a really good plane. Chance Vaught really made a winner. So the F-8 Crusader was one of those aircraft. I want to see if I can pull it up on here, and I'm going to read you some of the stats on an F-8 Crusader. I have it here. Bear with me one moment. Looking at my book here, guys. Hope everybody's doing well. Admiring the view of the planes behind me. Aircraft. Here we go. Chance Vaught built the aircraft. It was the F-8 Crusader. I'm going to read directly from the book here so you guys can kind of get a sense of what this aircraft was all about. When the Navy went to war in Southeast Asia, the gun and missile Crusader had already been developed in the fighter squadrons aboard larger carriers by the missile-armed Phantom II. However, that's another aircraft that did very well. However, the smaller carriers of World War II, popular with pilots, thanks to, in part, the fact that it still carried a gun. This was the last aircraft to have a gun. When the F-4 came on board, it was only a missile platform. Again, this mindset where we just going to use missiles to shoot planes down, it's starting to creep back in today's fighters. Yeah, we still have guns. We are having guns on the F-22 Raptor and the F-35, but they were placed there after pilots said, no, we need to have guns. We need to be able to get into a dogfight because you can't still have a missile. The Russians are still producing aircraft with guns. Even their stealth fighter has a gun. There's always going to be a gunfight, and there's always going to be a fight, dogfight in the air. You can't just shoot a missile and think that everything... You can jam the radar, and you still need to have that gun to be able to do that. As the war progressed, F-8C, F-8D, and F-8E Crusaders were withdrawn from land-based Marine squadrons and were rebuilt and updated. Respectively, the F-8K, F-8H, and F-8J standards for service on board small deck carriers similar to the RF-8 brought the detachment of VFP-63 on aboard. Many of the CTF-77 carriers were brought up with RFG F-8 standards. It was bigger engines. It was a great plane. Many pilots that flew it, they loved the plane. It was very responsive on the controls. You could out dogfight any aircraft that was in the air with this plane. The ones that made the F-4 better and taught the Americans that you need to have a gun on the F-4 were the Israelis. The Israelis put a gun on the plane. It was a Gatling gun. The problem was that they would get into a fighting. The plane had a great turn ratio, and you were able to shoot. The problem is that the A-9 missiles, the Sidewinder and the heat-sinking missiles of the time were not the best. It's like the torpedoes of World War II. We all know what happened during the Battle of Midway. It was dive bombers that saved the day. It wasn't the torpedoes. So the missiles had a tendency to be, they would go off target, they wouldn't fire, they would fly past their targets. But if you had a cannon, sense why the F-8 Crusader did so well. Hey Colin, how you doing? Yeah, the F-8 is very cool looking. It's a very good looking plane. So, watching all these, growing up as a kid, I used to watch Discovery Wings. I used to watch all the stuff about Vietnam, all the different aircraft. So those are shows, if you really don't really watch too much. Dark Skies is a YouTube channel. He has some stuff, but Discovery Wings is better. If you can find the Discovery Wings on, which I will put a link in the description box below. If you go down here, you're going to hit the thumbs up button first. If you're not a subscriber, you're going to subscribe to the channel. And then you're going to go down in the little description box right down there. And you'll have a link to the F-8 Crusader to be able to watch this. The other aircraft that was really good, and it was developed actually during World War II, flew in Korea, and was going to be retired after Korea. But the Navy, the Air Force didn't really want it. They were like, "What do we need this aircraft? We have fighters. We have long-range interceptors. We don't need this." Y'all know which one I'm talking about. The Sandy. The A-1D Skyraider. Yes, the very same generals that developed these jet planes to be just interceptors and not put guns on them wanted the Sandy, the Skyraider, taken out of service. Just like today, that's why they're getting rid of the A-10 and replacing it with the F-35. Anybody will tell you, you need to have a close air support aircraft. If you don't have close air support, you're not going to win any tactical advantage. It's just a plain fact. You can't fight even an unconventional war. You can't fight. Now, sorry, all cards are off the table if it goes global thermonuclear, because there's no winners there. Plain and simple. But if you're going to fight a conventional war, you need to have close air support. You need to have a gun. So, back to it. The F-4 Corsair, the F-4 Phantom, the Phantom II, which was the two-seat. You had your pilot in the front, your rear in the back. Everybody knows the picture of the Corsair. The Phantom had a cannon on it. When that aircraft would pull hard G's, the cannon would jam. But if you push the plane and put negative G on the aircraft, pilots would say you would be able to unjam the aircraft. I don't know how that would happen, but you would unjam it if you if you pushed hard, you could unjam it and then use it. It was a good plane, and if it had been built properly with a gun, it would have been a more deadly aircraft, because you would have, let's say, even if you had put 2 guns on it, plus the Gatling gun, it would have been a deadly platform. It would have been just as good as this plane here. Absolutely. I'm going to show you guys one aircraft that I think in the early stages of the war was very versatile. And it was very good. And some pilots even said it was a very good plane to get into a dogfight with. You're already going to know which plane it is just when I show you the picture. I'm not going to even need to say it. I'm going to make it big so y'all can see it. Everybody knows what this plane is, right? If you don't know, I'll give you a couple minutes to figure it out. This plane had cannons in the front. I actually have a model of this plane. This was the F-100. The model of the plane that I have. Big engine. It was also known as the Super Sabre. Swept back wing technology. Large engine in the back. Engine was about right here. It was all engine. From right here in the turtle deck all the way back. Pilot situated in the front. Had 4 cannons. Was able to carry missiles, as you see this one being flown with missiles. And it was also able to carry bombs. So as a close air support aircraft, it was a dogfighter style aircraft. North America did build it as a dogfighter. They kept the dogfighter tactic in it. But others, like Secretary McNamara, didn't like the aircraft because it had guns. He wanted everybody to use missiles because he had ties in the military to be able to do that. Hey Norm, how you doing? So yeah, the F-100 was a good fighter plane. You had guns, you had missiles. Still, the missile technology was still developing during this time period. But if your missiles failed, you could use your guns. So, very good airplane. Tactically, it was a great aircraft. It was built for the Cold War. But it had one advantage. Not only speed, but it had its maneuverability with that cannon. When the aircraft showed up in Far East Asia, the planes came with silver. They were bare metal. Just gonna put this picture a little bigger. Yeah, I'm going to be covered on this, but you guys will... Oh, Jesus. I lost the shot. Sorry, guys. Let me see. Browse the image file. Let me get it here. So the planes came when they started to show up in Vietnam. They were being used. Oops. As you can see in this photo down here, they were being used with silver paint. So they were being found pretty easily by the North Vietnamese. It was not until they started to get painted while they were in the field with camouflage, as you can see in this photo up here. The airplane really did well. Now, there is one that's being flown around the U.S. It's owned by the Collins Foundation. The aircraft in question, that aircraft was actually owned by the German Air Force. And the German Air Force sold the aircraft to the Collins Foundation. and they repainted the aircraft. It now flies with the Collins Foundation. I don't know if they were at I've never seen it at Sun and Fun, but it does make a regular visit to Oshkosh. Unless it's not doing it anymore. I'm not exactly sure on that. I'm going to show you another photo here. I mean, the aircraft just had really good lines to it. Actually, let's show you this one. This is the one that's at the Air and Space Museum. That one I saw at the Air and Space Museum. You can really appreciate the color scheme on it. It was a good plane. You can see the slats coming down when it sits idly. Big engine on the back with that burnt silver. The engine would get very hot back there. Very large motor. It kept the fighter principles, the close air support principles of the original Sabre, the F-86, when North America developed the aircraft. They did a really good job keeping the old principles of a dogfighter. But as we all know it, politicians always want to have their besties. That's why the F-104 came on board. And basically this aircraft went into, was withdrawn from service. This aircraft was withdrawn from service. And bear with me one moment, guys. Somebody was calling me. My phone. Sorry, guys. Sorry. So, yeah, where was I? Oh, back to where I was. So yeah, the F-100 was a really good plane. It was really designed for close air support. It was designed, it had the three things going for it: gun, speed, and maneuverability, and two. And it had its missiles. So it could do the things that it was designed to do. When they started to do air-to-air refueling, it also had that. It sucked a lot of fuel. But what aircraft didn't suck a lot of fuel during? Now, a big thing that happened during Vietnam, and actually before Vietnam, and if you watch the series of Vietnam in HD, they'll talk about it, where right after World War II, to help Europe rebuild, the Americans sold off a lot of their bombs for scrap. They sold the scrap, they sold the bombs to Europe, and when they got into the Vietnam War, we were running out of ammunition. So they sold their bombs for like pennies on the dollar. So you ever want to know how Europe got so rich? Was because they sold the bombs back, the metal and the bombs also, back to the Americans for a profit. One aircraft that went to Vietnam that was designed to be a Cold War bomber, fighter attack plane, to be able to carry a nuclear payload deep into Russian areas and fly with speed, but was never designed to be a dogfighter, and I don't know why I had a gun, was the Thud. If you were a Thud pilot going into a fight with a MiG, you were going to lose. Thud pilots always, there's 3 of them taking off for a bombing mission to Hanoi with their big fuel tank below, and then the bomb bay was on the bottom. They would put an actual fuel tank in there and big bombs on the outside. Many times there would be 5 of those planes. You really don't see bombs on the other 2 aircraft. That is because the military was so low on bombs. The one aircraft that's closest to the photographer is probably the only one that has bomb. The other 2 are just there for cover. I'm sure in this photo, those 2 didn't make it back, or the guy with the bomb didn't come back. Plane should never have been in Vietnam, but it was. The aircraft did pretty well as a Wild Weasel aircraft. Wild Weasel aircraft were countermeasure aircraft used to go in and scramble radars. Eventually was taken over by the F-104, and the F-104 did this role a little bit better. F-100s were still being used as bombers. Why? We have no idea. Of course, that was a Lyndon B. Johnson probably idea. Because again, he had a board. These are news reports. I don't know if this is true or not. But he had a board in the White House basement set up so he could basically fight the war from his office. What a waste. You know what made a debut in the Vietnam War? The smart bomb. Laser-guided bombs. F-4 Phantoms from the 8th Tactical Fighter Wing Wolfpack, made famous by Ace Colonel Robin Olds. Robin Olds didn't fly an F-105. He flew an F-4. And he was a fighter pilot of fighter pilots. He knew how to use the plane to its full potential. And when the plane got a gun on it, put a Gatling gun on it, he was a MiG killer. If you were a MiG pilot going up against Robin Olds, you were most likely not going to be making it back with the plane. You would have bailed out, but you'd be going back with no plane. If you passed away during the dogfight, you did honorably, but Robin Olds was the best pilot the Air Force had, and he was able to use the aircraft to its full potential. He knew the ins and outs of the aircraft because he fought in Korea, and I think he fought in the early half of later half of World War II. Over the next couple of podcasts, I'm going to go through different things. We'll talk about the Canberras here during the Vietnam War. We'll talk a little bit more about the Vietnam War. Next week's podcast, we'll talk a little bit about RC planes, and then we'll go back into talking about the Vietnam War. I'm really going to go into a little bit more about the Crusader. I think it's something that needs to be talked about, how the Crusader was such a good plane. I think a lot of podcasts, or a lot of the videos that are out there, don't really talk about it. but we are going to talk about it. The Crusader killers, how the Crusader was such a good plane being used in the Vietnam War. So, but we will talk about that next week right here on Shop Talk. Today I really wanted to go down the rabbit hole that there were decisions made during the Vietnam War. If you ever want to know why Saigon fell and why the Vietnam War was such a black eye, it was because it was made that way because of things that happened after the fall. And I'm going to put a link in the description box below that talks about it. PragerU puts out a really good video that you can watch. And I think I'll touch a little base on it next week. And we're going to talk, again, we're going to talk about the Crusader. We'll talk a little bit about the F-4. Those are the two planes we're going to touch base on. I delved a little bit on it, but also the other aircraft that was not really meant that, it's kind of funny. The F-9 Kruger, which was the Panther, the Cougar was a swept-back version of the Panther, fought in the Vietnam War. It fought in the first few actions of the Vietnam War. It started to carry the Sidewinder missile on it. It wasn't really used very much, but we don't really talk too much about it. They only concentrate on certain avenues of the Vietnam War. And it was a plane. It's a cool looking plane. The F-9F Panther was really used in its height as a bomber and a fighter bomber during the Korean War. And then this is something I had no idea about. I just learned about it recently by looking at some books that I was reading. And I didn't know that it was used in the Vietnam War. It was used in the first military actions of the Vietnam War. I have to look a little bit deeper. I do believe they had a shoot down of a MiG. I think it was a MiG propeller-driven aircraft or a Yak-9. Because the Yaks were flying during the first half of the Vietnam War. We're also going to talk about, this month, we're also going to talk about some of the other aircraft that were used that, if you go to some of my shorts, I'm going to be highlighting them. The Corsair 2. The LTV was also used, which was built by Rockwell Vought. It was basically, the Corsair was the smaller version of the Crusader. It was basically a pudgy version of the Crusader. Didn't have a gun on it. Again, this McNamara thing. If you want to know who McNamara is, go look it up on Wikipedia. Or go look online to find out who this guy McNamara was. He had his fingers in all parts of the Air Force, and he didn't like guns. He wanted everybody to have missiles. He got a lot of pilots shot down. A lot of pilots killed. We're also going to delve into the black jets that were used during the Vietnam War. I won't talk about which jets they were, but you know which ones they are if you're a follower of aviation history. So, the black jets were the aircraft that were secretive, and no one really knew too much about them until later on. Any pilot that saw these aircraft, they knew about one of them, but they didn't know about the other one. Vietnamese would hear the aircraft fly. They would hear these booms. They didn't know what the plane was. They had no clue. Missiles would be fired upon on the aircraft, and they would run out of fuel before they got to them. So we're going to talk about that one. Not this podcast coming up, but next week's the week after next. I'll think of something really nice to do for Thanksgiving weekend. We will have a podcast on that Sunday, but it's going to be a really good one, and I will have something special planned for that day. So I hope you guys liked today's podcast and we were able to talk a little bit about it. Again, next week's podcast, we're going to delve into the F-8 Crusader and a little bit into the F-4 Phantom. I'm going to go a little bit into detail about the F-8 Crusader. I love the plane. I think it is, like Colin said, it is one cool-looking airplane. I mean, I wanted to fly the plane. I was actually thinking of changing the motor out. If you look deep inside there, there's no fan blades. The blades kind of came out. And I really would like to fly it, but I got to see. We'll see what happens. Maybe I'll get this one back up and flying. Who knows? But that is it for tonight. It's I really like doing this, guys. I like talking to y'all about different stuff. The SST is coming along really good. I'll put some updated video about the airplane and how it's coming along. Probably going to do some covering on it. I've already figured out the coloring scheme. I got a lot of cream. So I'm going to do cream color with blue. I think that would be really cool. So it's going to be kind of like an old version of a old kind of like waves of cream with a little bit of blue striping here and there. I think that will look really, really neat. I already got the prop set up. Prop on it is going to be a 3-blade. And I know the battery setup for it. I am probably going to wait until next month, but I am going to buy a lemon receiver for it. The Gen 2 lemon receivers that are out are a lot better than the Gen 1s, from what I've been told. Gen 2s, they have what's called wind mitigation, which kind of stabilizes the plane in flight and lets you fly it on a little bit breezier day. Spectrum has it on their aircraft, on their receivers. They have safe mode, but Gen 2 lemon receivers do not have safe mode. They have wind mitigation. You have to press all 3 buttons and watch them blink, and then you're all set. And yeah, we'll watch that. I'm gonna put that. The F-86 behind me, I haven't flown that in a couple of weeks, because it's been windy down here in Florida. We're going through the trade winds. We got cold air. We still have hot air in the Gulf and along the Florida Straits, and we have a lot of high pressure. So the wind has been picking up really heavily. I haven't been able to fly it. I did fly the other day. I flew this one here, which you can barely see it, but I'll have a video about it. I got this plane here. It's called the Primo. Fat Guy Flies RC, if you ever watch him on YouTube, he had that plane in his... I don't see any video, but the RC Sailors did. If you want to watch their video on it, I'll put it in the description box below. You can, or just type in RC Sailors and type in Primo. It's a Dynam aircraft. It flies pretty good. I just don't like... First of all, they try to make it look like a Piper Cub by putting the cylinders outside. I sliced them off. I don't like it. Didn't look like a Piper Cub to me. So I sliced them off. And then I put smaller wheels on it. I guess it had bigger wheels, and I guess Greg over at Fat Guy Flies RC, he took the wheels off. It was missing wing bolts, so I added the wing bolts, and I put a 7-channel Spectrum receiver in it, and it flies great. I flew it in the windy day on Friday. It was able to handle its own. It has flaps, so you can do a stall landing, and you can do a stall takeoff. It's got a huge prop, a 13.5. That's a big prop. Probably maybe I'll experiment, put a 3-bladed prop, see how it flies also. But yeah, it really does pretty well. I hope to be able to try and maybe get this one flying also, which was my BF-109. BF-109, it had a mild crash because I had a smaller prop. I put a smaller prop on it, not thinking. I think a bigger prop would have been better. And the plane stalled and crashed. Broke the wing off. But I got it back together, and maybe, I don't know, when the wind dies down. I also have a new wing someone gave to me for my Viper, so I can get that back in the air. You know, that's a fun plane to fly. That really is, and it's a good trainer, especially for the F-86, because the F-86 is a whole different balls of wax to fly. I have to fly it in safe mode though. I don't have wind mitigation on that yet set up. I have to reset the setup for this aircraft, for that aircraft. But all in all, that's basically all about it, guys. It's been a 1-hour program today. Next week we will talk about the F-8 Crusader, and I know we will go in a little bit we'll go into a little bit more in depth about the F-8 Crusader. We'll talk about how it was used, who the pilots that flew it, and a little bit of how the development of the aircraft came about and how it was used so effectively in the Vietnam War and in the dogfighting tactics that it used. So again, next week, F-8 Crusader, we'll delve a little bit into the F-4 Phantom, and we will talk about a little bit about aviation news. Oh, one thing to make sure. Again, go over to, on this page, if you go over to my subscription page, my main page, there's a link in the description box, in the link in the description of my page. It'll take you over to the Substack where you can read articles that I've posted. Some of them are funny, some of them are not. But I will be doing some stuff like when I write about what I'm going to be doing transcript-wise with the F-8 Crusader, I'll put it over there. Any of the articles that I read, I will put them on the Substack so you can read them also. That way you can have links and things like that to look at. Okay? Guys, it was so much. I'm so happy you were able to join me tonight. Please, please, please hit the thumbs up button, share the video, and get others involved. We can have some fun here. Okay? I'll talk to you all guys later. Thank you very much for joining tonight. Guys, have a great week.